So in case of this reproductive behavior patterns that we will be studying, firstly we need to understand what are the mating systems in animal. Now before going on to mating system, let us get a general idea on the animal reproduction. Now as we have been dealing with reproduction since your lower classes, right from 10th standard, the chapter on human reproduction has been introduced. The same facts apply to the animal world also. That is, reproduction is one of the most fundamental processes in the living system. Now why do we call it as a fundamental process? Just like how breathing is important, how circulation is important, how excretion is important, reproduction is also an important part of the living system. This allows, reproduction is the process by which an animal can continue the own species. This word which I have mentioned here, procreate. Procreate means they can come together, they can reproduce and continue their own species. And when I say they are continuing their own species, it means what are they continuing? They are continuing their gene pool. Okay, that is जो वो family नहीं बोल सकते हैं, that is that entire genes which have been coming down from generations to generation, that has to be passed. Suppose if an animal fails to reproduce, what will happen? The gene pool of that particular organism stops there. Okay, precisely that is the reason why in humans also, after marriages, immediately the next thing is, okay, you should have a child so that khandan ko waris milega, etc., etc. Things are there. Now human reproduction is a totally different aspect. Of course primary aim is this only, that the animal instinct of humans, it is simply to continue the species. However, human reproduction is more complicated because of lot of involvement of emotions. Okay, then animals, with we are talking more specifically with animals, where some examples can be correlated with humans also. Now animals have evolved their reproduction as per habitat. Now habitat has played a very important role in evolving reproductive strategies. Like when an animal, most of the animals which live in aquatic habits, most of them, okay, I'm not saying all of them, most of them, they have external fertilization. Now you have examples of fishes, you have examples of amphibians, all of them, they reproduce, I mean their fertilization is external. So what happens is they need to devise methods in such a way that the eggs are laid in a safe place, the male is available, so that the male is, competitive enough so that he will fertilize the eggs faster. So all such kind of things are there. And when it comes to land living animals still have, more strategies, especially where, fertilization involves mating or copulation. Mating or copulation is where, external fertilization is internal, where the male and the female partner have to come together, where the male has to release the seminal fluid into the female body. So they have to have some interesting adaptations for all these things. And most of the time it is observed that in many species, it is the female who takes larger share than the males in feeding and protecting the young ones. So what happens is, you see, all the animals, in maximum animals, nearly 80% to 90% animals, it is the females who will take care of the young ones, who will look after their feeding. Male parents feeding the young one is quite, I will not say rare, but it is, less in percentage as compared to the females. Now what happens because of this? Because of this, and the male is free. Okay, because the female is taking care na, so the male is free to fertilize more than one female. And that is the reason why male individuals are less valuable than females. Okay, in animal world, and I believe in human world also, the male individuals are less valuable than the females, because the female plays much more significant role when it comes to reproduction in the entire animal world. And that is the reason, because the male has less value hai na? So the male has to show that he is more valuable, so the female needs persuasion for mating. The male has to develop strategies where he is going to attract the female, where the male has to advertise towards the female that why the female should choose this male. Okay, so it's a very interesting and a very fascinating aspect of animal world, which we can relate so many things in our life also. And there has so reproductive behavior में ये जो mating systems होता है, this becomes an important concept. So what are the mating systems? Let us understand the mating systems. There have been certain mating systems observed. The last one, I mean, after the last one, I will talk about one more interesting system. It is not a mating system, but I want you people to understand that aspects also of reproduction. Okay, the first aspect is monogamy. Okay, monogamy का मतलब क्या होता है? Monos means single and gammas means marriage. Means it is very simple that this type of mating system during the breeding season, okay, during the breeding season, these animals will form a pair for breeding season. Okay, ऐसा नहीं है कि हमेशा साथ में रहेंगे. Whenever there is breeding season, the same pair will come together. Okay, 90% of the birds are monogamous. Okay, so what happens is, you know, these birds during their breeding season, okay, when the breeding season is not there, the males live their own life, the females live their own life. When it is the breeding season, the male and female, generally in groups, they come together and they recognize their individual pairs. So they will mark the territory. Now, like this is a very classical example of monogamous relationship of penguins. Now what happens with penguins is that Antarctica, okay, penguins are living in Antarctica, and Antarctica is like a frozen zone, 6 months dark and 6 months light, something like that. More than, in fact, 6 months it is dark. So what happens is, once the breeding season is over, usually the males take care of the eggs and all. So those who have seen the movie Happy Feet, you will realize that the males, when they are taking care of the eggs, it is the dark period, and that time there is no female around. The females have now gone for fishing. So when the breeding season is not there, the male and the female individuals are totally separate. They don't interact with each other. They want their own bachelor life to be lived, so they are free moving here. But once the breeding season comes, they will start collecting together. They will mark their territories. Now how will birds mark their territory? Basically for them, their territory is nothing but a nest. Okay, so they start building a nest, both the male and the female. Once they develop a monogamous relation, they start building a nest. And then here, because it is monogamous, what is observed is both the male and the female will take care of the young one. Okay, now I can share this fact about penguins, that in penguins, you should watch those National Geography and Discovery Channel programs. A very beautiful thing was shown about these. These are larger emperor penguins. Smaller penguins bhi hai. What happens is, you know, the mother stays with the young one, and the father goes for finding the food. So they have to jump down those rocks into the water and get the food. And then you know, the female will wait when her husband will come and when the child will be fed. And then once, you know, and it's a huge colony, it's a huge, I mean, there are nearly 10 lakh penguin nests lying here and there. The male, after that hunting expedition, comes back. एक तो वो मेल का खुद का लाइफ डेंजर में जाता है, because there are whales and there are killer whales and other dolphins etc which can hunt the male down. So the female does not knows कि वो वापस आएगा भी कि नहीं. Okay, so the female waits for a long time and finally the male returns to that island. But the problem is, now the male has to find where the nest is. So the female and the young one, they give a call, which is very specific towards the male. See how beautiful these animals have designed a system where by simply calling, okay, so maybe I don't know what exactly things will work in animal world. Probably it is the frequency. Okay, it is the frequency of the sound, and they may have a language of their own. We never know. Okay, so based on their language, the female may be calling and the male recognizes. Once the male returns, the male will provide food to the young one, and now it is the time for the female to go and bring food. ओके, सो बारी बारी से है ना, ये लोग मेल एंड फीमेल एक दूसरे के मतलब फूड लेके आते हैं. इवन हॉर्नबिल्स डू द सेम थिंग. Hornbills, initially the male will feed the young one and the female, but once the young one is slightly big, then they take, you know, one after the other, they take chances. But penguin behavior you should study. Very interesting behavior in most of these penguins, that how they take care. And if you have to watch about penguin behavior, thoda wo Happy Feet movie dekho, you will realize what I'm trying to tell. So you know what happens is, ये क्या होता है इसका फायदा लॉन्ग टर्म पेयर का, that searching the mate becomes, you know, the energy which is spent in searching a mate and the time which is spent is saved. एक बार पेयरिंग हो गया ना, तो वापस से वापस ढूंढने की जरूरत नहीं है. So this system is very interesting. So monogamous, 90% of the birds are monogamous, but the same thing is not applicable in the animal world. Then comes the second system, promiscuity. Now promiscuity is something which is, you know, quite dangerous term to be used here. I'll first define this, then we'll read this. It refers to absence of any prolonged association and to multiple mating by at least one of the sex, that is one of the partners. यहाँ पे क्या होता है, इन द फर्स्ट रिलेशनशिप ऑफ मोनोगैमस देयर इज अ लॉन्ग टर्म रिलेशन. लॉन्ग टर्म एज इन दे विल, you know, they will be associated for a longer time. But in case of promiscuity, there is no prolonged association. Now look at this definition. This is more with respect to human, but इसी से आपको समझेगा. Promiscuity is a long standing pattern of behavior of having sex more frequently with more partners than normative for the culture. For example, when you see here are a group of 5 men and 5 women, this single man is shown to have interaction with all the 5 female. And does he has any relation as in has he has a strong feeling for anybody? I don't think so. Okay, so in today's world, such a man will be called as a tomboy, a flirt, or anything like that. Okay, so this is promiscuous behavior. That is, in animals also, the male, usually it is the male, okay, who goes for multiple mating without any association with the female. Okay, मतलब वो फीमेल के साथ ज्यादा अटैचमेंट नहीं, कुछ नहीं. इट इज सिंपली, यू नो, टू कम, mate, deposit the semen and go away. What happens further, it does not matter. So this is one example, and this happens in deer mice. And a very meme material for this is something which you have seen so many times. Okay, this is promiscuity. Okay, where already the fellow is involved with a partner, but still he will look after somebody else. So in human behavior, promiscuity की तरफ काफी झुकाव होता है. If you watch those crime patrol episodes and all, there are so many cases related to this. So human behavior, reproductive behavior, that's why I told you that human reproductive behavior, it, if you try to keep it in one system, you will find it very difficult कि इसको ये mating system में कहाँ बिठाए human behavior को. So it is very difficult. But in animals this happens, where the male will be involved with many females without any association. यहाँ पे क्या होता है, काफी सारे breeding pattern में the male and female they remain एटलीस्ट ब्रीडिंग सीजन तक साथ में रहते हैं. बट promiscuity में क्या होता है, there is no association. The male will simply come, fertilize the female and go away. They don't share any relation. Okay, so it's only simply to have sex, to procreate, done. Okay, and gone. ऐसा condition. Then the next behavior, polygyny. Okay, I think the image itself is very self-deprecating, that what I mean to say. Poly means many, gyne here means female, and this is the most common type of mating system. Okay, that is, one male has access to many females. Okay, so in polygyny, what happens is the male will defend the area which usually contains the nesting sites. The females will come down and they will nest down, isn't it? So the male tends to defend those nesting areas so that other males don't come and take over his territory or take over the female. And here, very important, the female's choice of mate is influenced by the quality of the male and his territory. The best kind of territories will exhibit better male, and the female will come to that. Now, for example, I mean, in many cultures of human also this exhibits. Okay, polygynous culture हमारे यहाँ पे काफी time से, if you check out पुराने जमाने के राजा महाराजा ले लो, or there are many cultures where this is polygynous culture is, but I feel that in human polygyny should not be followed for a very simple reason, because we don't have so much liberty that you have lots and lots of property so that you can give it, provide it to your offsprings. There was a time when polygyny used to be practiced because human population was limited, but today when you compare down with polygyny, the population is so vast that having polygynous nature will be very dangerous. Okay, now one very classical example of polygyny is this, a pride of lion, where you know that one male lion, he has control over many female lions. Okay, and then this male lion, if he is challenged by another male, what will happen if this male loses, then this female will shift their what I can say, accessibility to the new male. So this polygynous culture is exhibited in animal world. Okay, humans also exhibit, but I feel it is morally wrong. Okay, similarly जैसा पॉलीगाइनी होता है वैसे पॉलीएंड्री भी है. Okay, there no hard feelings or religious sentiments here, but this is one classical example of polyandry where a female has controlled access over more than one male. Okay, this is a very classical example where Draupadi was married to 5 men. Okay, this was in fact a progressive kind of behavior where the female carries more rights, that she can choose over which male she will prefer down. Okay, of course all 5 will be the husband, but it is her choice whom she has to spend more time with. Okay, so what happens with in case of polyandry is that the female will provide parental care while males will seek new mate. Okay, so here, because and the females are allowed, abhi jaise for example, one female, she has more males with her, so when the female is taking care of the young one, the other males are free to go and mate. Okay, that does not mean that the males will not take care of the young one. They will also take care. One very classical example is this, American jacana. This is jacana, very characteristic water bird identified by these feet. Now, this American jacana, it has control over the female. The female controls many territories of nesting areas of several males, one female. Okay, so breeding is dominated in by the females. So you imagine, that the female has more power in the polyandrous condition. But polyandry that way is, if you see here, limited examples are there. And then this very classical example of mating behavior is courtship, which many animals exhibit, especially mammals do exhibit courtship behavior. Now, what exactly is courtship? Courtship is where two animals of different sexes, they come together for mating. But the male, usually the male, okay, has to have lots of signals and has to give lots of signs, so that the male has to behave in a particular way so that the female will be interested in mating. For example, this behavior of humans. Okay, a very classical example of courtship. Okay, so courtship behavior ensures that the male will tend to display the best of his abilities so that the female can choose the best of the best males. So that is a very interesting behavior. Okay, courtship. For example, these behavior patterns where the male peacock is displaying the feathers towards the female, or this behavior here, actually both the male and the female partners are involved together, but then such kind of behaviors, they exhibit this mating system. It involves both the sexes. However, there is one more interesting system in animal world. Of course, it is not a part of the mating system. It is a slight deviation from the reproductive behavior. It is the choice of the individual. Okay, this thing is not covered in your syllabus, but I felt like discussing on this thing also because it is an aspect of behavior. Okay, now an individual in case of animal world, generally it is the male and the female who come together. However, there are behaviors in animal world where number of species have shown to be associated with the individual of same sex. Okay, that is, a male individual will be involved in a partnership with another male individual, or a female individual exhibits a relationship with a female individual. What in general we call it as homosexual behavior. Now this kind of behavior does exhibits in the animal world, and they find it perfectly fine. Okay, there is see, animal behavior is totally different. For them there are no set of rules which govern the behavior. So in animal world, two individuals who are together, and if they belong to same sex, it does not matters to any other animal. But in humans, we talk about a society, we talk about heteronormativity, and there are so many aspects. But if you look from the animal world point of view, these things are finely working with the animal world. The same thing should finally work with the human world also. Okay, see, ideally speaking, human behavior, reproductive behavior is supposed to meant only for procreation. That is the difference, isn't it? That is the question. Why are you having a partner? Only to create children? That is a big question, isn't it? Are there no emotions? For example, when I watched that movie Sand Ki Aankh, okay, there was, in the beginning itself, the men simply will come and have mating with their females only to have children. No emotions, nothing. Okay, so we as humans, we call ourselves as more evolved species. What is the reason why we call ourselves as more evolved species? It is probably of the complicated emotions that we study. So when it comes to emotions, why can't emotions be with respect to everything? Okay, so inclusiveness of everybody irrespective of their choices, when it is there in the animal world, who आर कंपेरेटिवली जिनका इमोशंस हमसे ज्यादा, हमसे कम कॉम्प्लेक्स है, if they are readily accepting things, what happens with humans? Okay, that is a very important question which I feel the younger generation should ask more frequently. Okay, there are generations who have lost in this kind of, the patriarchy and the very forced society norms, and generations have even got lost. काफी generations बर्बाद भी हो गए. But today the generation is more vocal because they talk about their choices, they talk about their freedom and their freedom of life, isn't it? The same thing applies in the animal world. In fact, if you try to do a simple search about animals showing same-sex behavior, you will be surprised to find so many examples, right from dolphins to chimpanzees to even lions. Okay, so it's perfectly fine. It's nothing a deviation, or it is nothing like an abnormal behavior or anything. These sets are simply governed by some behavioral patterns which we cannot explain. Okay, let the person be as the person is. Simple. Okay, an individual's perception does not affect us to a larger scale. Okay, so that was about the mating system. So 5 mating systems we discussed. What was the first mating system? Monogamy, where single partner is there throughout the life. What was the second type of mating system? Promiscuity, where there is no association of individuals for a long time, and it is only meant to be mating, simply mating over, and the male will move away. Usually it is the male. Then the next system was polyandry, where the individual, okay, polyandry, where the polygyny, where one male has access to many females, and example also I gave you of lion. Then there is polyandry, where one female controls the territory of many males. And then there is courtship behavior, where two individuals have to display, particularly the male has to show more display to attract the female. Okay, so these are the mating systems. Now coming to the courtship behavior. Okay, we will
Sir,
discuss
sir,
about.
excuse me.
Yes.
Do hyenas usually have polyandrous systems because they have
Uh,
maternal?
I am not very sure about hyenas behavior, but dogs show that kind of behavior. I mean, canine family possibly could show that kind of behavior. Polyandrous condition जो आप बोल रहे हो. But for them also, in case of canines also, it is the best of the male will carry down. And in fact, in case of dogs, I believe it is more of promiscuity, where the male individual rarely takes interest in what happens to the female and the young ones once the mating is done. Okay, the males hardly take and the males are not even associated with the females. I'll need to check out with respect to hyenas. I'll check out and get back to you then. Okay, then now
Sir,
what
sir,
exact?
just one more
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I read an article the other day where the hyena cubs usually fight for mother's milk.
Okay.
So, is this a kind of kin selection? Because
I will not say it is kin selection here. See, kin selection is what happens is, where you are favoring your own young ones. Okay, this is a simple behavior between sibling competition. Okay, getting more milk now, that is one problem which happens with organisms where they produce more young ones. Having more young ones will lead to more challenges amongst the young ones. It is like siblings. The same thing happens with us. If you have a small house and you have more number of siblings, there will be always competition between the siblings who will get that particular space to sleep. And usually it is a fight which ensures lot of struggle, and then ultimately whoever is the stronger one takes over. That can be called as a sibling competition rather than kin selection. Kin selection is about favoring. यहाँ पे favoring नहीं है. हाँ, had it been like this, that one young one, after feeding, after having its feed of milk, or in between, it will look at the other young one who is not able to get milk, and he leaves the nipple of the female and allows that young one to take over. That can be called as kin selection. Okay, fighting for getting milk is not kin selection. I hope that answers you.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so what exactly is courtship? Now, the definition of courtship says that it is the behavioral interaction that occurs between the male and the female before, just before the act of mating. Okay, now what exactly is the definition of mating? In simple terms, biological mating is where the male will introduce the penis into the reproductive structure, whether it is the cloaca or the vagina of the female, to transfer the semen. Now, before this action is done, the male has to, allow that the female has to allow the male to do this. So for this, the male, generally the male, okay, has to display some behavior that will grab the attention of the female. And this behavior, and in some animals, both the partners do this. That is, the male as well as female both perform some set of actions. Like last year, I had talked about the ritualization behavior in the great crested grebes. So those there, both the male and the female, they display this behavior. But in animal world, nearly 80% of the time, it is the males who display some kind of behavior of courtship. Now what will this courtship involve? There are some characters. Now this characteristic could involve, displaying something, or building of something. So all these things. So first characteristic is finding the mate. Okay, now for unisexual animals, unisexual means what? Where the individual is separated as a male individual or a female individual. So finding a suitable mate is very important. So what happens now? Usually in animal world, we see that the females tend to stay in a group. अभी हमने इतना सारा organizations देखा, बराबर, societal organizations, प्राइमेट सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन देखा, मल्टी मेल, मल्टी फीमेल, okay, monogamous, etc. Now in animal world, generally if you see, more or less these animals are scattered if they do not have any herding behavior. Even in herding behavior, what happens is the males and the females are together. Like in a classroom, there are 100 students, but And amongst those 100 students, one student has a liking for some particular XYZ student. So how does that happens? Okay, how does that happens, or rather how will this fellow advertise his feelings? So finding a suitable mate, so amongst that entire group of animal, the male has to find out that, okay, this female looks quite fine for me. And recognizing the receptive partner is also very important. Receptive partner as in, see, now that group of animals will include very young females, very older females, some proper aged females which are in the breeding heat. So the male has to identify those. So for this, some animals could use visual signals, some could use chemical signals. Primarily it is chemical signal. How does animal understands that the female is in the heat? Usually when a female is in heat, she releases some kind of chemicals which attract the female, attract the males. And that is the reason why many a times you see that dogs and all, they tend to smell the anal region or the vaginal region of the females, because they have some kind of scent behaviors which attract the males, and then the males start fighting over that one particular female. So even animals, the males also can display something which will attract the female, like this sand grouse. Okay, this is puffing up the throat. Okay, this puffing of the throat will attract the female, and look at how the tail has been expanded. So this puffing of the throat will attract female towards the male. More and broader the puffing and the sound is produced, more the female will grab, the more the male will be able to grab the attention. This is what happens with now, for example, somebody with very nice aromatic perfume and very brilliantly clothed person, immediately people turn their head, right? So why does that happens? Because that is a kind of attraction. So frogs can produce sound to find a mate. Then comes this aspect. Okay, yeah, this is also a behavior of the spider. This is called as a peacock spider, where it is displaying this design. This is the head, this is the abdominal region where it is displaying the design for a female, so that the female would come near. So this is basically for mate finding. Then we come to persuasion. Now persuasion is very interesting aspect. Here, once the male and the female have recognized, okay, we have to mate. Okay, I mean, अभी तक mating कुछ पक्का नहीं हुआ है. Only thing is, I like you. Okay, just can we have a talk? Something like that in animal be. खाली ये आंसर में ऐसा लिखना नहीं, please. Okay, it is only for your understanding I'm telling you. So what happens is, the male and the female, they come together, but the problem is, generally in animal world, the female tend to stay slightly behind. Okay, and the male will try to coax the female, usko poke karega, या उसको बहुत ऐसा उसको एक तरह से he will try to tell her that now we should mate, but the female is very reluctant, and the male has to perform a set of behavior which will attract the female, and the female will persuade for courtship, that is for mating. So the male has to display something, only then the female will get ready, uska reluctance टूटेगा. So what kind of behavior could be done? For example, this bird. Okay, this is a bird of paradise. This is a way of persuading the female. This is the dull female. Okay, and this is the male. This is an act. This dancing is nothing but it is persuasion to the female, where the male is displaying that huge neck feathers he had expanded, and by this dance he is trying to persuade the female that it is high time now we should mate. Okay, or like this behavior where both the male and the female great crested grebes, they move over water like this. They have जिन्होंने last year lecture attend किया था, they will realize I had talked about this behavior and shown you also that they start walking over water and then they take a big leap of flight and something like this. Okay, they go neck to neck, something like this. So that is called as persuasion in the courtship behavior. Then comes synchronization. Now, synchronization is not there in all the courtship behavior. See, the first two behaviors that we talked, where mate finding and courtship is there, sometimes the behavior ends with courtship. ओके, दैट इज कोर्टशिप ना उधर ही खत्म हो जाता है, दैट इज मेटिंग उधर ही खत्म हो जाता है. वंस द मेल डिस्प्लेज एंड डज सम काइंड ऑफ acrobatic acts, the female gets impressed and the female allows the male to mount her and to mate with her. Sometimes it stops there, but sometimes what happens, the courtship gets extended if there are one or more males at the same time. Okay, now जैसे मैंने पिछला इमेज दिखाया, उधर एक ही मेल बर्ड डांस कर रहा था, बराबर. बट समटाइम्स व्हाट हैपेंस, द फीमेल इज वाचिंग वन मेल displaying a particular behavior. Suddenly one more male pops up and starts doing the same kind of behavior. Okay, this behavior is called as synchronization. Okay, where the same behavior is in different individuals at the same time is called as synchronization. So a very classical example, primarily it happens in the case of external fertilization, where there is more competition, where the female will lay the eggs, the male has to rush, and it can be affected a lot by lunar cycle, predators, etc. So one very classical example is this animal. Okay, can anybody recognize what animal this is? Which crab? Crab तो easily समझ जाएगा सबको. Which crab is this?
Hermit crab.
No. Hermit crab lives inside a shell.
Fiddler crab.
Yeah, this is a fiddler crab. Okay, this is a fiddler crab which is seen characteristically in muddy areas. Now, this fiddler crab, the males are characterized by one prolonged claw. Okay, which is nearly larger than sometimes even the body size, like this one. If you see at the back, इसका दूसरा क्लॉ नॉर्मल होता है छोटा, बट ये क्लॉ काफी बड़ा होता है. There is a very interesting behavior. I could not get the video. I think one of my friends is doing some behavior studies. I'll ask him to send me that video. Okay, where what happens is, suddenly there are many males who start moving their hand. ऐसा हाथ है ना, ये जो ये वाला क्लॉ है ना, उसको अंदर की तरफ खींचते हैं, as if they are calling, इधर आ, इधर आ, ऐसा एक्शन में. And it is not just one individual doing that. There are many individuals who do this. Okay, one starts doing, the others also start doing. Okay, so it is like a synchronized behavior. Now when I am reading about synchronization, I am understanding that what he was noting down, usually there could be one small female somewhere here, and she will watch one male. Like for example, this male was moving his claw like that. Suddenly even this male starts moving. Now what happens is, the female's attention is diverted. The female has to look here also, the female has to look here also, maybe a third male comes up and starts doing. So now the competition becomes very strong. Okay, now it is with the female whom to go with. Okay, this is called as synchronization. So I said that sometimes the courtship can stop at the persuasion part only, because by persuasion the male and female may be able to mate with each other, but sometimes it can go to another state called as synchronization, where that same persuading behavior can be shown by many more individuals. So like this one, that is the occurrence of the same behavior in different individuals at the same time, is called as synchronization. And one more classical example is this: fireflies. Okay, fireflies also usually, ये जो जुगनू हम लोग जो बोलते हैं, they have one male will display the lighting, and then suddenly all the males will display that same behavior. Usually it is the males who try to go for brighter glow and attraction, so that the female will get attracted. So now here what happens is, the female's attention is diverted in many places. Who is glowing better? Okay, so this is called as a synchronized behavior. Okay, where the same action is repeated by many individuals, different individuals. So that is synchronization. And lastly is reproductive isolation. Many a times after I mean, after synchronization and after persuasion, the animals will mate only with the members of their own species, and that could be in a very isolated manner. Some animals, they tend to move away from their group, like the grebes and all. They don't stay in a group once the persuasion and once the pair is formed. They will move to a different place, okay, altogether. Even these birds, albatrosses, also do the same thing. Okay, this kind of behavior, this is actually their dance. Okay, this is their mating dance, where both the individuals, the male and the female, will try to, you know, dance with each other, and this is in total isolation as in separate from their group. So this is called as the courtship behavior. So characteristic of courtship में ये चारों चीजें आ जाएगा. That is the mate finding, then there is persuasion, there is synchronization, and there is reproductive isolation. Okay, so these are four very interesting aspects of courtship. If you try to search for example of courtship, पूरा web browser भरा पड़ा है अलग अलग courtship behavior से. Okay, even in fact, when we look at human society also. Acha, I forgot to give example. Polyandry, the where I said, you know, that one female is allowed to marry with many males. This does exist in some societies in India. But that's a very cruel thing, I feel, because certain Himachal societies, Gadwali societies and all, what happens is, if a family has say 4 brothers, the female is married to all 4 brothers irrespective of their age. Okay, even if the youngest one is 8-year-old and the female is 20-year-old, she gets married to that 8-year-old. So these are very, you know, cruel rules, I believe. And even Tibetan societies, some Tibetan societies also have such kind of marriage practices, where one female is married to all the brothers of that particular family. So these are actually cruel practices. पहले के टाइम में ये होता था because the populations were very limited. There was not much broad population spread out, and that would lead to, you know, more children in the family itself. But now these practices should not be continued, whether it is polygyny or polyandry. No, I believe, I am very against such kind of practices. Okay, especially when it is talked in the name of culture, etc. Okay, I don't believe. Now culture has to change with time, culture has to progress. Okay, it is not necessary that what is taught in culture will be always true in all the ages. With ages, the culture has to change. If the culture remains as it is, it becomes stagnant. Okay, a very beautiful line is there, that the culture is like a flowing river, that when river keeps on flowing, there is fresh water. But as you build dams of rules and regulations and you try to fit the culture into a structure, the river becomes a pond, and ultimately that same water remains in the pond, and the pond starts becoming dirty because there is algal bloom, the water becomes green, unfit for consumption, and nothing can survive. Okay, that is my views, it is my personal view, which I feel has to be done. But if you don't agree with that, that is your choice. Okay, so that is about courtship behavior, which I wanted to tell. Okay, I think it's already 10:50. It's just 10:45. Okay, I'll move with the next part also. Okay, maybe we'll just cover this part, courtship behavior in spiders. Now, see, you have examples of courtship behavior. I have framed this syllabus and I have introduced 3 examples. Some examples are totally out of the box. Out of the box as in no ethology books, etc. will take that, because I felt you should know about it. So I introduced in the syllabus 1 example from invertebrate and 2 examples from vertebrate, and both are from birds. One is about, in fact, both of the bird courtship behavior is related to nest building, and some very interesting type of nest building. One is the bower bird and the other is baya weaver bird. So we will be studying about these birds, but I think today I will restrict only till courtship behavior in spiders. Now, spiders are very interesting animals. Okay, Spiders, they belong to phylum Arthropoda and a class called as Arachnida. Now these spiders, they are predatory animals. Predatory is that they hunt down and they kill their prey, and they will, eat them. Now they are ready to eat and kill animals which are usually smaller in size than them, and if they come in their range. So it does not matters to a spider whether the other organism is a spider or it is a fly or what it is. They are ready to kill that. So that is the reason why we say that the female spiders are cannibalistic too. Now this is a very classical example. This is actually a brown wood spider. This is the female and this is the male. When you compare the size, the female is larger than the male, and there are chances that if the male does some mistake, the female will simply grab the male and make it her prey. So females are cannibalistic. So usually this happens that when there is mating between the spiders, it can prove fatal to the males. Okay, which are, if the males are smaller than the female, it can lead to the death of that male. Okay, so very risky business. Then the male courtship behavior, it involves two aspects. अच्छा, ये जो spider का जो behavior है, one is stimulation of the female sexually and other is to suppress the female's non-sexual behavior. This is very interesting aspect. Okay, the first part, that is stimulating the female sexually, means what? To persuade the female for mating. Second thing is उसका नॉन सेक्सुअल बिहेवियर को सप्रेस करना है. कौन सा है उसका नॉन सेक्सुअल बिहेवियर? ऑफ हंटिंग डाउन द प्रे. Okay, so male has two tasks to be done. He has to make the female ready to mate, and secondly he has to suppress the feeling of the female to eat him. Okay, तो दो बहुत बड़ा टास्क है. So what happens is, as the male approaches, this is a very general statement. Okay, it is not very specific to some spider. The male spider, it approaches the web, and what it does, it plucks a string with its leg, and what happens is, जैसे वो string खींचता है ना, there is some kind of vibration of some particular frequency. So this will help in reducing the aggressive behavior of the female. However, if the tune is wrong, then the male could face the predatory behavior of the female. This happens with us also, right? If you are going to clean the house and you see a spider nest, जब आप वो spider nest पे झाड़ू घुमाते हो, so your force is so much that the female, immediately rushes to the jhadu. Why? Because the female feels there is some kind of prey has approached, but the female does not realize this कि वो झाड़ू है और उसको भागना चाहिए करके. So the male has to be very careful about which string the male will be pulling and what will be the frequency, so that the female will not come and attack the male. But if he pulls the wrong string and wrong tune, the female will feel that some prey has come into my net and I need to hunt that down. तो जो मेल बेचारा आया है कुछ और इरादे से, वो खाना बन जाएगा. Then in some species, this is a very interesting species. Anybody recognizes this spider?
Black widow.
Black widow. Okay, this is called as black widow spider. उसके नाम में ही है उसको black widow क्यों बोलते हैं. Sagar sir, just give me 5 minutes.
Okay, sir. Continue.
Yeah. So why the female is called as a black widow spider is, if you observe, the female is comparatively quite large than the male. In fact, ये काफी पास का photograph है, इसलिए ये male थोड़ा बड़ा दिख रहा है. Ideally, the female is a very small one. Now, what this male does is, usually it brings a nuptial gift. Nuptial gift as in a happy gift, that is nothing but a food which is wrapped in silk. So it's like, getting chocolate. So the male, it brings some food, some gift to the female, and what happens, the female is busy unwrapping the food and eating it, and the male takes that chance and will mate with the female, and the male has to be quick in this. Okay, because if he takes time in mating, the female will finish the gift and she will make the male also her food. Okay, so that is the reason why the name comes as black widow spider. Widow matlab vidwa. So here at times it happens that the female will kill her mate itself. That is the reason why the name comes as black widow spider. So this is very interesting kind of courtship behavior in case of spiders, where such kind of display behavior can be there. I will suggest you try to find out even the courtship behavior of praying mantis. वो और भी खतरनाक है, because the female eats away the head of the male who is copulating. Okay, I mean the male is copulating and the female kills the male, and that in fact assists the male to release more and more semen. You read about it, you will find animal world is full of interesting behavior pattern and very dangerous behavior pattern. So I'll just stop here about the courtship in spiders. In the next lecture we'll shift over to the courtship behavior of bower birds, the nest building of baya weaver bird, and even we'll talk on the parental care.